Watching Good Afternoon Kentucky with Erica Bivens and TG Shock.
Welcome back. Well, you have a chance to learn about Civil War history in Jessamine County through programs and guest speakers. And here to tell us all about it is Ernie Price, the superintendent of Camp Nelson National Monument. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. All right, let's start probably with maybe the most obvious question a lot of folks might have. The Civil War fought more than 150 years ago. How is Camp Nelson still relevant today?
Oh my gosh. I would almost say, how isn't it really?
Yeah.
I think to understand our nation's history and what we think is modern division is actually not modern at all. And a lot of these issues are deeply rooted in our history. And a place like Camp Nelson reveals it starkly in a very educational way. So the more we learn about Camp Nelson, the more we learn about our nation.
Absolutely.
And what's on the evening news is in some ways in our museum and in our exhibits and things like that. So it's very relevant.
And we're talking during the commercial break here. A lot of people, I think, are familiar with Camp Nelson National Cemetery.
Sure.
But help us understand the difference between that and also the National Monument.
Absolutely. So the Camp Nelson National Cemetery is on the grounds of the historic Camp Nelson, which was a military supply depot during the Civil War, here in central Kentucky. And then the cemetery was needed as a result of all of these many thousands of people being in the camp. And diseases spreading rampantly, especially in those days. There was always hospitals associated with these large camps. So the idea that the cemeteries there is really tied to Camp Nelson's history from the beginning. But the military camp closed in 1866. The National Cemetery was designated after that and is still, as I'm sure everyone here locally knows, an active cemetery. But its history and the history of Camp Nelson's military supply depot are interlaced indelibly. But we are separate entities today. The Veterans Administration runs the cemetery. The National Park Service runs the historic site.
Well, there's this awesome thing called the Winter Lecture Series, and I think this is not only for history buffs, but also people that might just be wanting to learn a little bit more. Tell us more about what this is.
Yeah, exactly. I love history, but I understand that it's not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. And you don't have to be a history buff to come to Camp Nelson. But the lecture series, we do that in the wintertime because although the weather hasn't been bad lately, sometimes it's not great in January, February, March, and it's a good time to come inside and have activities. So the lecture series features experts, academics who can speak on topics that are directly related to Camp Nelson and Central Kentucky during the Civil War. So if you just don't know a lot about it, don't feel bad. This is a great opportunity to learn more about it, and it's free. So
it's free, and the first one's coming up. It's like January 14th.
Yeah,
right?
a week from Saturday. So they have one in January, and then they continue into February and March. They're always on Saturday.
Okay.
They're always at 11 o'clock. The only little hiccup is this first one on January 14th is actually at the park.
Okay.
We have a meeting space there. That's where we had the lecture series last winter. If anybody attended last year, it's in the same place. But starting with the February and March events, they're actually going to be at the Jessamine County Public Library.
Nice. Okay.
And they've been a wonderful partner with us, and this is just another example of that. They've got an excellent space to have these, and so, but all this information is on our website, on our Facebook, etc. But if you're interested in the next one, it's at the park.
Fabulous. You mentioned it was free, but do you have to register or anything in advance?
No, you do not. Just come in with ears on and eyes open, and hopefully ask questions and learn more. That's what it's about. We want people to understand more about what Camp Nelson was historically, and that it's now a national park unit in our backyard right here in Bluegrass, Kentucky.
Which is awesome, because I think a lot of people might be out there and maybe they have like letters, other mementos that are related to the Civil War. Is there anything they can do with that?
Absolutely. So Camp Nelson was such a massive site. At its peak, it was as large as Lexington, believe it or not. And I know you've been out there and people see the rolling green hills there today, but it was a massive industrial site at the time. And so a lot of people have connections to it. White and black people. I mean, there were white military units formed there. Former African American enslaved people became United States colored troops, as they were known. It was also a major refugee center, so it's a big civilian site. Point being that there's well over 10,000 people who were at Camp Nelson at different times. Many of them, their descendants may live in the area today. We're so gracious that Jessamine County made this park in the late 1990s.
Right.
It only became a national park in 2018. So I'd like to take advantage of your audience to say, hey, there may be people out there that have information or ancestors or letters or pictures or anything associated with Camp Nelson and don't know what to do with it, or maybe don't even know exactly what it is. We would be the perfect place to come, maybe share a copy of that, or we can help identify what it is. Anything to help us preserve the history and share it for the next generation.
Absolutely fascinating. You're just a wealth of information. We're going to have to invite you back real soon to talk about other events. And
thank you for having me.
Maybe we'll find a family out there who has something to
I
share.
hope so.
Thank you for taking the time.
All right, thank you for having me.
Stick around, we've got your headlines right after this.